Shalom, Shalom. This is Yair Davidiy, speaking to you from the land of Israel. I represent Brit-Am Hebrew Awareness. Brit-Am Hebrew Awareness is a movement involved with the lost 10 tribes of Israel. We research to find the lost 10 tribes of Israel. We do research about it. We encourage discussions and involvement in researches concerning it, and the implications both on the personal and national levels. And we have found the lost 10 tribes to be amongst Western nations. And the English-speaking peoples are especially important because within those nations, the tribes of Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh were predominant, and prophecies concerning Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh were fulfilled in those nations, and that is a strong proof concerning their own Israelite identity and the Israelite identity of all other peoples related or associated with them. Tudor Rose is a symbol. It's one of the symbols of the British monarchy, is one of the symbols of the British monarchy today. It derives from the English monarchy, still used today. It began in the time of the Tudors, the Tudor Monarchs of England. The Tudors included Henry-viii, 1485-1509, Henry-viii, 1509-1547, Edward IV, 1547-1553, Mary I, 1553-1559, Elizabeth I, 1559-1603. Before the Tudors came to power, the first Tudor was Henry VII, so known as Henry Tudor. So before the Tudors came to power, we had the Wars of the Roses. In England, there was the Wars of the Roses, 1455 to 1487. These were a series of civil wars between the rival houses of York, represented by a white rose, and the House of Lancaster with a red rose, and they were fighting over which house should rule over England. Eventually, Henry Tudor, representing the House of Lancaster, took over. Henry wasn't really strongly related to either side, but he represented the House of Lancaster, and he took the throne. And he married a woman who represented the rival House of York. So in his person, in his dynasty that he established, he combined the two houses. And he also combined the two roses. He took the white rose of York and interposed it on the red rose of Lancaster, and that producing the Tudor Rose. The Tudor Rose consists of a white rose inserted over a red rose, and a combination of red and white roses, with the red petals being on the outside and the white petals on the inside. There are 5 white petals and 5 red petals surrounding them. And there may have been at that time a real rose, a real breed of rose with that colouring. It's not certain. Some people say there was, some people say there may have been, and some people say there wasn't. The depictions of such a rose are the products of artistic license. Someone painted them up. Whatever the case, the Tudor Rose is a symbol. It's a symbol of that age, of the Tudor dynasty. Important changes came to England under the Tudors. The Tudors were of Welsh origin. The personal banner of Henry VII, at the beginning, it had depicted a Welsh dragon. Henry VII, 1485-1509, he was quite important in his own right. He stabilised the kingdom. He strengthened the monarchy. He reorganised the finances of the realm. In many ways, he was quite conservative, but he brought with him stabilisation. That time, England was, relatively speaking, a small country. It had only 1/5 the population of France, also about 1/5 the population of Spain, and And it took a while. It was only several centuries later, in the 1700s, with the agricultural revolution and the industrial revolution, that the population of England, of Great Britain in general, began to grow exponentially, and it became a populous country. Till then, the population, relatively speaking, was low. And nevertheless, under the Tudors, England became a modern country, became a national country. It was somewhat different than previously it had been. The son of Henry VII, Henry-viii, 1509-1547, initiated the English Reformation. He defied Pope Clement, and he broke away from Rome. He ended the ecclesiastical submission to Rome, and that is one of the reasons why his reign is of importance. He himself had an unusual personal life. He had 6 wives, 2 of them he executed. He fought wars with France, with the Holy Roman Empire, that is Germany, in our terms, the equivalent of Germany, the Holy Roman Empire. He also fought wars with Scotland. He expanded the Royal Navy. He strengthened English control over Wales and over Ireland. And he also wrote books on theology, and he composed music. He was quite a gifted person. And he also said, also had Bibles installed in all the churches, in a public place where anyone who so wished could approach them. And he separated the Church of England from the Church of Rome. And he took an individualist stand on international issues in several ways, and culturally a type of renaissance took place under the Tudors. England began to become a great country. Under Henry-viii, the new middle class was created. He seized all the properties of the church. Up until that time, the church had owned about 20% of the land of England. And Henry took control of it and distributed it amongst others, and in effect creating a new middle class. Change in the social structure of the country. The church had not been leeching. You cannot say the church had been leeching, had been parasitical concerning the common people, because even though it controlled 20% of the land in the kingdom, it also supplied a livelihood, sustenance to also to about 20% of the population. So when Henry took control of these properties, caused certain social dislocation. Another thing of interest concerning Henry that a lot of people don't know about is that the Marano Jews were allowed to enter England. Marano are also known as Anusim in Hebrew, meaning the forced ones. Marano Jews were Jews originally from Spain, or from the domain of Spain. At that time, Spain was a powerful kingdom. Spain ruled over a good portion of Central and South America, and also it ruled over Italy, it ruled over other areas, and it ruled over the Netherlands. It was a world power. And in 1492, the Spanish had expelled all of the Jews in Spain. Before then, in the centuries beforehand, the Jews had been persecuted. There had been pogroms, there had been attacks on Jews. Many Jews had been forced to convert to Christianity. And even though they had been forced to convert to Christianity, a lot of them tried to remain Jewish, tried to maintain some type of connection with the Jewish people, with the Jewish religion. They did that in secret. And so too, when finally all of the Jews were expelled from Spain in 1492, they were given a choice to convert to Christianity or to be expelled. And for some of them, a lot of them, in fact, expulsion was virtually the same as death. was putting their lives in danger, so they did. So they did become what are called false Christians. They became Christians, but their sympathies were with Judaism. And so the Spanish had an inquisition, that is a body of people who would persecute Jews. Anyone who suspected of being a Jew would be examined, sometimes tortured. And this was the climate that existed at that time. And anyone could be suspected of being Jewish. Even people with red hair were suspected of being Jews. The king and queen, the Queen of Spain herself, Isabella, was red-haired. But even so, and she was the one who helped set up the Inquisition, or initiate the persecution. But even so, because more Jews, a relatively larger percentage of Jews were red-haired as compared to the average Spaniard, Jews would be, people with red hair would be suspected of being Jewish, so they would also be examined by the Inquisition. And so that was the way it went. And this was the reality we were living with. And this also reflected on England. The Jews had been expelled in 1290, so a few centuries beforehand, and they had been expelled from England. Then along came Henry Tudor, Henry VII, and he married his son Arthur. He married his son Arthur to the daughter of the King of Spain. And in the marriage conditions, in the marriage contract, he undertook not to allow Jews into his kingdom. This was at the insistence of the Spaniards. So Arthur married Catherine, the daughter of the King of Spain. Arthur died, and was no longer, and so Henry became the heir. Henry became the son, and then his brother Henry became heir to the kingdom. And so he and his son was married off to Catherine, and then he became King of England. The Spaniards at that time also ruled over the Netherlands. And in the Netherlands there were Marranos, who were Jews, descendants of Jews, or who had gone there from Spain or from other areas. And they settled there, and they were often quite openly Jewish, but even though it was against the law, and the Spaniards were against it, and the Spaniards were persecuting Marranos in that area, and Henry had some influence because he was married to the daughter of the King of Spain, so he endeavoured to persuade the Spaniards to alleviate the persecution of Marranos in the Netherlands. In continuation, Henry was at altercations with Spain because he divorced her daughter. He divorced Catherine and took another woman, and also changed the religion to be no longer Catholic, but rather something else. And Henry, on the whole, had showed some sympathy for Jews, even though he was ambivalent. With some ambivalence, but he had a Talmud written, for instance. Talmud was written out, it was handwritten on his behalf. At that time they didn't have printing presses, and and it's still available. This Talmud can still be seen. He also had at his court musicians, quite a few musicians of Marrano descent. At one stage he had a group of musicians, and at the beginning of his reign, who were all of the Marranos from Italy, that at that time was ruled by Spain, and also Marranos there, and all of this group of musicians that he had were Marranos from Italy, and the papal delegate in England protested, so Henry sent them away, and after that he brought them back again one by one. Amongst also regular Jews, Ashkenazi Jews, apparently in England at that time, who were simply keeping quiet about their ancestry, that they were not bothered. On the other hand, there were 6 Portuguese Marano musicians in England, and Henry, for some reason, or possibly the officials of Henry, had them imprisoned, and later had all 6 of them imprisoned. Later they were released, but 2 of them, by the time they were released, 2 of them had already died in incarceration. So that is a subject that is not, needs more examination. Henry, as we said, he broke with Rome because he wanted a divorce from his Spanish wife, and the Pope would not give it to him. And in his arguments, and the arguments of his officials with the papal authorities before the break with Rome was final, they had theological discussions and arguments and legal arguments and so on over church law, and the agents of Henry quoted from Jewish sources. And they also consulted with the Marano experts on Jewish matters concerning the justification or lack of justification that Henry claimed to be able to divorce his wife Catherine. Henry was a scholar. He knew things, he knew languages, he read books, he wrote books. Also, he may have been a little bit different, one could say. He, as we said, he cut off quite a few heads, and not everything is black and white. After Henry came Edward, Mary, and then Elizabeth, 1559, 1603. Elizabeth also was friendly with Jews. In her time, Protestant took a stronger hold over the English people, and also England became a power in its own right. It defied Spain, it defeated Spain in war, and there was quite a renaissance of talent in her time. Elizabeth had learned Hebrew as well as other languages. She also had a friend, a woman friend, a confidant, who was a Marano. Elizabeth tried to persuade this woman to become a Christian. She gave her the option of converting to Christianity or living in the country. So the lady left the country. Elizabeth apparently considered the English to be a descendant from Israelites, or at least she referred to her English subjects as Israel. And so did Sir Francis Drake, who was a seaman who led the English Navy against the Spaniards and defeated them. And he too referred to England as Israel. And during the time of the Tudors, the Tudor Rose symbol began to become quite popular. It's still there. You still find it around. You see it in ceremonies. It is still used as representing the English monarchy and also England in general. Wikipedia tells us the Tudor Rose, sometimes called the Unity Rose, is a traditional floral heraldic symbol of England and takes its name and origins from the House of Tudor, which unite the House of Lancaster and the House of York. The Tudor Rose consists of 5 inner white petals, that is the inside petals representing the House of York, and 5 red outer petals to represent the House of Lancaster. Tudor Rose is also incorporated as part of the badge of the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom. The Tudor Rose represents England alongside the floral badges of the other constituent parts of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Different military units in England and Britain, townships, organisations in both Britain and the USA make use of the Tudor Rose in their symbols. Also we, our movement, Brit-Am, Hebrew Awareness, Movement of Lost 10 Tribes of Israel, we use the Tudor Rose as one of our symbols because it represents what we are about, and as you will see, it is a direct connection to what we are teaching. We will see that Tudor Rose is also mentioned in Jewish sources in connection with Israel, and in a way it is substantial. It strengthens it strengthens our understanding that the British and the later peoples are descended from the lost 10 tribes of Israel. Apart from the Tudor Rose, Brit-Am Hebrew Awareness Movement of the Lost 10 Tribes also has another symbol that is the lion flag of Jerusalem, that may be seen here in the background. And what we have, the Tudor Rose. The Tudor Rose is very similar to a description in the Zohar concerning the house of Israel. In the very beginning of the Zohar, it speaks of the house of Israel. It compares it to the house of Israel to a rose with 13 red and white petals. So what is the Zohar? What do I mean by the Zohar? The Zohar is a book, or actually it has several volumes, several books. It's considered a book, a religious book the Jews use. The Zohar was first publicized by Moses de Leon in 1243 in Castile in Spain. That was before the Jews were expelled from Spain in 1492. In this first page, at the very beginning of the Zohar, the first of the 13 petals of the rose, we say representing 13 tribes of Israel. The tribes of Israel are 13, actually 13 in number. The Israelites are descended from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jacob was renamed Israel. Israel had 12 sons. And those sons became the forefathers of the Israelite tribes. One of these sons, Joseph, had two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. In Hebrew pronounced Manasseh, Ephraim and Manasseh. So altogether you have 13 tribes. Nevertheless, the Bible, by juggling with the figures, tries to maintain a quorum of 12. It does that by either not counting Levi, because Levi was scattered amongst the other tribes, or by counting Levi and counting and only counting Ephraim and Manasseh as the one tribe of Joseph, or in one case not counting Simeon. At all events, a quorum of 12 is maintained, but the rose representing Israel has 13 petals, and each petal represents one of the tribes of Israel. So that is 13. And we have 13